Hey folks, in today's video we're going to discuss the differences between running a game at a convention versus running a game at home.
So some of you were at our tables at this Gen Con, and it was very nice to see all of you. That was our first time running a game at a large convention. Now, we've run plenty of games, different systems and different styles and all that kind of stuff at home and at friends' places, but there really is a difference, at least for us, in the way that we prepped, what our expectations were, and how we did things at the table, even for some of the games that we have run at home when we were at that convention.
I think I ran into a little bit less of this because mostly what I've run at home has been our homebrew D&D, whereas I ran Crash Pandas and The Quiet Year at the convention. So I kind of approached those in I really needed to have a firm grasp of the rules because I was going to be teaching everybody the rules. Whereas with the home game, as the GM, I always make sure I know the rules that are going to be pertinent, but if a player says, oh, hey, I want to cast this spell, I rely much more on the player to tell me, what's the wording of that spell? How does that work? Or if there's a rule dispute, I might ask one of the players to look that up, whereas running the game at the convention, I wanted to make sure I knew all the rules, so any questions that came up, I could answer, or I knew exactly where it was in the manual to just double-check wording or stuff like that.
Well, I know for you that was a little easier, especially with the Crash Pandas, because it's a one-page game. And there isn't a bunch of flipping through the book or anything like that because there's no book, so it was easy to look that up. I ran a Savage Worlds game, and I enjoy Savage Worlds. I've run it before. I've run that story before. I made some adjustments. But it's not a system I'm as familiar with. So, you know, I definitely knew my rules. I relied a lot more on having the GM screen with stuff highlighted and printed out so that I knew exactly what to look at. But, you know, I did ask my players. I said, you know, go ahead and look that up for me, or let's do this way. I maybe sort of, I don't know if you want to call it cheating. Sometimes I would say, how are you used to doing this? Oh, I like that. Let's do it this way. They were probably telling me the exact rules. But it's just a turn of phrase that makes it sound a little bit less like you don't know what you're doing. And it's honestly, it's something I've kind of picked up from teaching. And it's not about being a know-it-all. It's just about presenting yourself in the best possible light. And I also use phrases like, this is how I'd like to run this today. You know, and as long as it's not really flying in the face of any of the rules, it's just that little bit of a homebrew. And a lot of the people that we play with and run games, they do that as well. And I think it worked out pretty well.
I also ran, especially with the Crash Pandas, ran into, let's just go with rule of fun. There were a few times where it was like, well, it could be one or the other of these skills, and I would ask the player, like, well, how exactly are you approaching this to basically allow them to say, I want to use this skill, this is how I'm going to do it. And that kind of, I think, for both of us, we approached the running at a convention is, I'm running this for the players, I'm not as much a player in this game.
Now, let's be really clear. We didn't run Pathfinder Society. We didn't run Starfinder Society. We didn't run Adventure League. So, you know, all of those, the rules do need to stay really consistent. This is the way we always do this every single time. That idea of consistency when you just hop in and out wherever you are. That didn't apply quite as much because we weren't running those types of games. For me, some of the biggest changes were the way that I approached it, and you kind of stole my thunder a little bit. It's exactly what I said I wanted to talk about. But yeah, you know, we've had the videos before. We've talked about how the GM is a player. They're contributing to the story. We're all building this world together in our home games. But for the game at the convention, I didn't really think of myself in that role. For me, the most important rule was that the 4 to 6 people, or 7 people in one of my games, the people at my table had a good time. And I was there to facilitate them having a good time. Like, even if I didn't, the point was that they did. Now, I did have a blast. I had a lot of fun. But my job wasn't to be the one having fun. My job was to making sure all of them did. And that's a very different mindset from how I put things together for our home games. I don't think it's bad. It's just different.
Yeah, and similar with that, I also was approaching it in I wanted to best represent the games that I was running, especially because they were indie games. So most of the people who were at my table had never played that game before. So I wanted to make sure with my prep, I knew the rules well, I knew what the core of the game was, and that I could articulate that to the players so they were, in addition to having a good time, they also got a good sense of the game of, hey, is this something that I want to pick up and maybe run with people, or find somebody at home that will run this to keep playing this game, these rules, this kind of thing.
For me, some of the other differences, first of all, was pre-Gen characters. You've got 4-hour time periods at Gen Con. That's for the most part. There's some 2-hour games. We played it in an 8-hour game. But for the most part, at Gen Con and similar conventions, you're looking at a 4-hour chunk of time. And that doesn't mean that you're playing for the full 4 hours. It takes people a couple of minutes to get there. Everyone needs to get settled. There's some camaraderie that's going on. There are breaks that people have to take. Realistically, we had about 3.5 hours worth of play. And so for me, that means a major difference at a convention game is, one, showing up with pre-gen characters. And I did that. I had the printouts. I had just a couple of blank spaces, like for them to come up with their names or something like that. And I just briefly described each one and handed those out. For me, it was also all about jumping right into the action. With the Starfinder game, or not Starfinder, with my Savage Worlds game, we jumped immediately into describing some pretty harrowing situations and having them make a couple of checks. With the Tales from the Loop game, we immediately jumped into trouble, and I had split the party. Normally at home, I like to take our time and do some world building and character building, but that's not what my players were at the table for. At least I don't think. They were there to jump in, and I really wanted to make sure that I gave them that.
Yeah, I've noticed that generally convention games, there's a little less role play and more of, let's have the mechanics of the game facilitate the role play.
Sure. Well, I mean, I would make the argument that that's just an existential argument about tabletops. Do you role play? Do you do the mechanics? Or do you let one influence the other? The Tales from the Loop, I mean, by virtue of that game was 90% role play anyway. The mechanics are there to support the storytelling. But that's what makes Tales from the Loop such a different type of game, as opposed to like a Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. And a big thing with the convention games is these are one-shots. There's no next session. Every now and then you can sign up for multiple sessions, but the majority is this is a one and done. So prepping it, wanted to make sure that, hey, we've got that full story arc within this 3.5 hour chunk of time. Yeah,
your raccoons were in the race and they finished their race. All of the kids in one of my games, they got to a big Scooby-Doo moment, and I purposely left it on a little bit of a cliffhanger, but that session was done. And it was designed if they wanted to pick it up at home, they could, but it didn't feel like anything was left unanswered or anything like that. Because, it's one and done. You only have that short amount of time to tell this story, and you want it to feel like you've accomplished something, that it was worth your time at the table.
Well, and I liked with your Savage Worlds, there were several character deaths, but then they got to grab a new character sheet and play with that, so that kept all of the players engaged for the whole 3 hours. It wasn't like, oh no, my character died in the first hour, and okay, bye guys. They got to, even if it wasn't with that finishing that character's story in that one shot, they got to be there for the story of it. And I think that's something too, there's a lot more of, as the GM, I'm presenting everybody else with the story, whereas with a homebrew, I feel like it's a lot more collaborative of, hey, here's my ideas for the stories, but the players get to fill in a lot more details with their characters. And with an ongoing campaign, I will change where I'm planning on things based off of choices my characters or my players make and things that they find interesting or ideas they come up with.
And in some convention games, I've noticed as a player, and hopefully my games didn't feel like this, that can lead to convention games feeling a little bit more railroady.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if you find yourself in that situation, maybe giving a little benefit of the doubt to the GM, because it's part of a nature of the beast. We only have so much time. And a lot of the times, I think that these games are kind of presented as a, hey, have you always wanted to try this? Here, come and get a taste for it. I know you said a bunch of people had never heard of the games you were running.
Yeah, especially Quiet Year. Several people were like, what's this game? This sounds fun. And they were really excited to then go pick it up and play it with other people because they got that taste of what it was.
Whereas everyone in my Tales from the Loop game had heard of Tales from the Loop before, and that's why they were signed up. They'd never gotten a chance to play it. My second group, some of them had played a couple of times, but they really wanted more. And so, yeah, you're just presenting this little bite-sized piece, and it's designed to make sure my players are having as much fun as possible, and that it's all sort of a self-contained story. For me, that's the biggest difference between what I do at a home game.
So there are our thoughts on the differences and similarities between running a home game versus a convention game. Have you run a game at a convention or played it in one? And what are the differences you notice between the kind of home group and the convention model of game? Let us know in the comments below.
A big thanks to all of our patrons, especially to Sean. If you want to support our channel, you can head over to our Patreon page and check out the perks of being a patron.
So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like it and share it out with somebody. Maybe tag someone you think would really enjoy it. We put out videos every Tuesday and Thursday, but don't forget to subscribe because we do like to put out some bonus content from time to time.
All right, so until next time, I'm Dawn.
And I'm Ryan.
And this is Roll for Initiative.
Bye.
Bye.
We've both run plenty of games, lots of different... Really?